Everybody wants the fruit, but nobody has the roots, right? Are they willing to do it? Are they deserving of it? Meaning that they have demonstrated that they've flipped the narratives in their life. They're showing progress. They're making good decisions. They're winning despite losing. They've learned their lessons. And then lastly, are they willing to actually do whatever it takes to get to the next level? If they're not, find somebody who is, because there's so many people out there. But we're kind of in a world right now where people expect to have things presented to them rather than working hard to get them.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are waiting for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory, walk. Warning.
This is a public service announcement. The Walk in Victory podcast is where we have conversations purposed to evolve lives. You may not want to evolve. Then tune into another bleeping podcast. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening and or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory, walk, there's in leadership, there should be embedded in the leader to have safeguards against team drama. Whether it's relationship tension, not saying that we're all adults, not saying that two people on a team can't date, but how can two people on a team have a relationship and it doesn't come back to impact the work? You have to those conversations in order for that to happen in that way, because all relationships yield a bit of highs and a bit of lows. But in order for it to not to cause drama or to bring undue stress to the team involved as a whole, conversations need to be had before things evolve. Drama, how to help people to overcome personal dilemmas, rather either it's giving them personal space, you saying no, even though they're saying, no, I can do it, I'm here, and you know that they're really like mentally checked out. Some people really have a high tolerance for pain threshold, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, so they can still perform at peak performance because they learn how to separate whatever's going on in their personal lives from their professional lives. But that takes a very unique skill set, a very unique person who can come to work and not bring the baggage, whatever the baggage may be, with them. And then you also have to take into consideration that some people just may have unique personalities. They may be good at giving instruction, good at rallying people together, but are horrible at the soft skills that it takes to make yourself seem authentic. So yeah, you can come in and say, give the great speeches. There's a famous football player. He's famous not for football. He's famous for his speeches. And he gives these speeches, and you can look him up. Jameis Winston, he plays for Cleveland Browns. And he give these speeches, and the speeches be, you don't even know what the heck Jameis is talking about. He's always dramatic. Then he'll go out and throw 5 interceptions. So there's like a huge disconnect. And you would have to think that, yeah, the quarterback usually has to shine in the spotlight. But after a while, the players, I don't hear that crap. You're out here throwing all these interceptions. So there becomes this level of disconnect. And that's why we get so disappointed. We know people are not perfect. We get disappointed in world leaders, spiritual leaders. Now we're living in a totally different era, totally different age. I remember coming up. So I'm going to use when I was coming up, I'm 49. I'll be 50 next year, the Lord seriously. I remember coming up, our presidents couldn't have been divorced. They wanted the presidents to be a certain level of morality, certain level of impeccableness. They wanted them to. Now it doesn't matter. They just grab them, they do whatever they want to do, and so the bar has been lowered on the expectations. Why? Because we found out throughout the course of the years that we were holding people up to a certain level of expectation that they couldn't actually live up to. And so we started to lower the bar to now where there may not be a bar. However, when it comes to team building, relationship, and team um, camaraderie, we're going to have that conversation and all things that with our guest today, Brenda. How are you?
Hi, I'm really good. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for joining us. If you don't mind telling our audience a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I I joke around sometimes to say that I'm a recovering 30-year HR pro, but I've been informed by one of my partners I'm rebranded as a human result professional. And I like that a lot better because that's actually more or less what I do. One of the things, the biggest things that I do is that I actually help leaders like really kind of constrict and cut through all of that drama so that way they have the ability to grow and develop their team and take them to the next level. In addition to that, I also help them build and work through and navigate through the dynamics of actually building a high performing team. In a nutshell, that's what I do. But I'm also a serial entrepreneur. So there's a lot of people in here that, like, I was you at one point in time. And from being a first time manager, first time high level leader, all the way to an entrepreneur and a business owner. So I've covered a lot.
Yeah, so let's dive into 30 years of human resource.
Mhm.
Right. So that leverage you as you made your 1,000 hours. Kudos. So you know how to navigate through the weeds. But you're on
Thousand. Okay. I'm on the leaderboard here.
you're on the leaderboard, right? But you're on the other side. So you look at an organization from one side of the coin where the entrepreneur may be looking at it from the bottom line, sweat equity, the needs, the systems that I need to have in place. We may have a blind side to how to protect that, how to build strong teams, how to think about the soft skills and the dynamics that can go into having one vendor that you solely look into as the source of your resource and all of these things. What are some of the things that you've learned over your 30 years?
Oh my gosh. How much time do we have? So, oh, that is a hard question to ask. There's a couple of things that I've learned. Probably if anybody wants to make any kind of progress, we'll just do this. We're baselining here, right? You want any kind of progress with your team, be it just getting, that one individual that's just not lining up into a higher level of performance, just sometimes even doing what it is that you want them to do, just like turn them from an underperformer into a steady Eddie, right? All the way to taking your steady eddies and making them, dynamos, if that's something that's even doable, right? There's a couple of things that you can do. First thing that you can do, honestly, is listen more and talk less. And one of the reasons why I say that is because people tell you everything, not for what it is that they're trying to say, but also listen to what they're not saying. So here's a really good example. People are going to tell you how they're behaving their way through a situation. Blank, yeah, this is what I did and how I handled it. This is what I didn't do, and this is why I didn't handle it. I mean, they're telling you every step of the way how it is that they're addressing something. They don't always necessarily justify the why, but usually where leaders will cut them off is when they hear what it is that they've done and they've never gone in deeper and say, okay, help me understand why, or help me
Mm.
understand how did we get here, right? And which leads me to the next one is that when you listen more and you talk less, to get the kind of information that you really want from people, you have to learn how to ask good questions so you can get good answers. This is
Mm.
just fundamental stuff, right? People in general are not good communicators. We're not. because we communicate through our own filter. We communicate from our own positioning in the world. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So believe it or not, this morning we had one of my clients. I do a little fractional HR still. I don't do very much of it, but I've had this client for years and years and years. And we just had a shift within their accounting department. So at the same time, they're bringing up an executive vice president. So he looks at his payroll, that if we process payroll on a Friday, in his bank, it's there on a Saturday. Well, he hasn't yet figured out, until I told him, that if we process on a Friday, payday technically isn't until Monday. And he says, well, I get my stuff on Saturday. So now he's looking through his own filter, right? He's only looking through his person experience. He hasn't yet understood that what we're doing reaches it goes deeper, it goes wider, right? And so I explained to him, I said, not every bank processes on a weekend, which is the reason why the company that we run payroll from, the administrator itself, they can't generate everybody's payday on a Saturday. So that means that their payday will actually be on Monday. Yours technically will be on a Monday, even though your money's in your account, right? So that's a really good example. So I had to help him understand that I have no attachment. Whatever it is that they want to do, that's totally up to them. But the thing is that it's incumbent for me. It's like right now, like he's looking through his personal filter, right? So it's almost like taking a lemon and putting on a pair of blue glasses, right? And when you look at that lemon, blue glasses, what color is the lemon?
It's blue.
Green. Right, it's
Oh,
green,
wow.
right? Green, right. Like yellow and blue make green.
And blue makes green.
Right, but in the reality is that the lemon is still yellow, right? So that's something is that and every human being does this. We always look at things through our own filter. So it means that we have to remember to take our glasses off and look at a much bigger picture, right?
That would be a trait of a good leader. So do you find that sometimes when you're coaching, you have to coach leaders into to seeing the outside of their worldview, outside of
Yeah.
their blue lenses? Oh,
Yeah,
because
and that's true
that's
for
a
just
skill.
not everyone. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody's looking at a green lemon in life, right? Some look at a lime green lemon, others look at like, like with your color in your jacket, like super dark green, yellow, right? So it's just a matter of really helping people realize those types of things. And that only comes with, honestly, time and experience. You have to go through your lessons and, you know, you're going to have two different kinds of leaders. You're going to have the leaders who are going to be okay, we're going to execute, and we're going to be very, like on track with something and not really look at why we're looking at a green lemon. Then you're going to have the people that are going to sit there and say, I really need to look at this in a much different way. And, you can have people that can be both and have amazing breakthroughs, but we're not getting that through this life without somebody's help to show us where we are missing the mark or where we can actually do better, or give us an option that, hey, listen, if we reframe something, we might be able to see something a little bit different and have a little bit stronger progress towards it, right? There isn't a person on this planet that's going to be able to course through here and do it flawlessly.
So you take the 30 years of HR experience, you become a serial entrepreneur. How do we land here where you're helping people to become conflict resolutionists or to avoid conflicts or strategy building by putting systems in place? Because if there's already conflict, we know that resolution, people say, yeah, oh yeah, I'm over it. And everybody walk out of the meeting and they still hold on to their blue lenses.
It's rooted.
They
Yeah.
just got to figure another way to act, to grind the axe. But how did you get into the coaching industry that you are now serving?
Yeah, you know what? But that comes with HR, to be honest with you.
Yes.
It comes with, I was doing it as a paid W-2 employee with the companies, and I was listening to everybody at every level, because I tell you right now, as an HR person, like, you hear everybody's opinion, and trust me, they have one. right? Everybody's got an opinion about something, and you're going to hear it whether you want to or not. So that's honestly, that's where it started. And it started with, and it's really kind of interesting because it really aligns with a natural talent that I have. So I have a natural gift on finding patterns. And where I really apply that is helping leaders understand what employees' potential patterns of behavior are when they're faced with something. And the reason why I can call that out so quickly is number one, people do it all the time. They do the same thing over and over and over and over again, right? But the question is what are you going to do with that information once you realize that? How are you going to properly respond to it where the response is going to be the most effective? So you're always going to have some form of conflict. You're either going to have productive conflict or you're going to have destructive conflict. And so I have a gift for everybody that's listening. I already used one of these 3 phrases that I have a course on. I'm going to give everybody, it's a free thing. And I already used one of them that's helped me understand. And it's a course called the Impact Scripts. Anybody can go to my website. They can go to yobrenda.com, which is a heck of a lot easier than spelling my last name. So yobrenda.com, they can go ahead and fill out their information and they're going to get instant access to this course. And it's going to give you 3 scripts plus 2 bonuses that will allow you to really navigate productive and destructive conflict. So like I mentioned one earlier, help me understand. If you want to cut through the ego and not have to deal with the ego and actually ask somebody for the facts, help me understand is one of the best phrases you could possibly use. And you can use it on your employee, you can use it on your tax attorney, you can use it on your kids, you can use your spouse, you can use it on your in-laws, and you can use it on your outlaws, right? So if you ask the question, like, help me understand what's going on, or help me understand why you believe that is, or help me understand how did we get to this situation? Help me understand what you perceive the next things are going to be. Help me understand what your next steps are going to be, right? You see what's happening is that you're just asking for the facts without saying, hey, I need the facts. Help me understand. All you're doing is just like, hey, fill this brain with information. And then what happens is that people, they actually start to break down those defensive walls. Because if you say it right, you can also say, well, help me understand how we got to this place, right? You can use it every now and again, and that's a tool, right? Or you can really, if you're really, truly genuine, this is like, okay, so if payroll went sideways today, help me understand how did we get here? Let's trace the step back, fill me up, like catch me up to date. You're not making an accusation, and that may very well the person who did payroll, and something may have gone sideways. And one of the worst things that we do is that we come up to people and say, hey, Johnny says you're doing this. Well, what do you think that's going to happen? It's like the person that you're making that statement to, like their walls go right up. If this was the Starship Enterprise, their shields would be up faster than you would believe, right? Seriously. And so then it's a real effort to knock that down. And basically what has happened is that when you make that kind of accusatory statement, what happens is that people that trust is eroded immediately. Or you're chipping, or it's being chipped away at to the point where after the umpteenth time of making a statement like that, rather than saying, help me understand, because help me understand is what building trust is. We're talking to adults. So when we make an accusatory statement like Johnny says you're doing this, or Johnny said you did this, or I get this one person emails me and says, well, I got people telling me this. And I always say, well, who's telling you that?
People.
Because you know what's going on. If you're going to say, people are telling me I'm going to call you out to the mat. I already know what's going on, right? So who's telling you? And let's take a look at that specific person instead of just like doing a general thing, right? It's an erosion thing. Like I can trust that this person now always comes to me and says, like, all these people are saying anything when I know it's one person and probably who didn't do what they were supposed to, right? That's the pattern. And I can trust that.
Yeah.
But
So now you've accumulated and you've amassed all of these skills over your 30-year journey in the industry, but taking it and now moving it from a W-2 employee to showing other entrepreneurs that my unique skill set is necessary for your building, your organization, your teams, your leadership. How did that come about? What was that like for you?
Well, it is really funny when I transitioned. So I left my last my full W-2 job. I was a vice president of human resources, and it was for a pretty sizable organization. And I have had the privilege of working for 6 Fortune 500 companies as well. So I've been able to take all of this corporate knowledge and really help small businesses apply strong practices that, look, I can quantify anything. I can give you a dollar value of just about every action because everything's based on labor dollars, right? So I can always show the ROI. So I started getting out there, just started putting my information out. I joined some masterminds. I got into the room. And I'll speak from an entrepreneur's place. If you want to be known and you want to get into the space of like coaching or knowledge share, like you have to get into the rooms because digitally and electronically, you're fighting the world for information. You're fighting the world for attention. However, when you get into rooms and you start networking or you start volunteering or you start, building your reputation in a mastermind, right? That's a real that's a real strong flex. And I've had the privilege of being in rooms of multimillionaires. I have met a couple of billionaires in my time. And I've met a couple of people that are going to flip to becoming billionaires, right? But it's all because I got in the room. When you're in the room, it's 100% up to you what you're going to do. And believe it or not, that's exactly the same coaching that I give entrepreneurs and leaders on having that conversation with their employees. It's like the minute you make that decision, you're now in the room, you're in the spotlight. So how are you going to navigate this?
Yeah, and a lot of times people don't really know what their purpose in the room is because how did you go over to just being happy in the room? Because some people just like to take the photos in the room. Oh, look, I'm around a bunch of millionaires and billionaires. Money just don't rub off. You got to have a plan in order to execute, in order or
Yeah.
find value in order to get it. How did you get past that hurdle of because you're coming from a space, and I know you said you're a serial entrepreneur, but you're coming from a space where the thing that you're doing now that you're most successful for, you was always W-2, so you exchange your value, your instinct, your skill set for a paycheck. Now you have to really understand the value of your style, your insight, your knowledge, and how you can charge a number that exceeds a certain type of value. So how was that process for you when you were actually looking to build towards what you've built now?
That's an interesting question because, as an in the seat W-2 HR pro, I always looked at things from a business aspect. Like I'm
Mm,
not that HR person that looks at everything from well, this person's going to feel this way, this person's going to react that way. I'm also a strategist, right? And so when you sit in the chairs that I sit in, I've sat in a sat in, it's the worst grammar ever on a Monday. Blah. Anyway, when you're in when you hold the seats that I've held, you are also looking at the budgeting. You're looking at you have to have a business mindset if you're
yeah,
gonna do what I've done in HR, right? If you're gonna be in the big seat, you gotta have the big business knowledge. And so what's amazing is that when you're in retail, like a lot of my past experience, even in HR, comes from the big box retail. And if you've been in big box retail, you learn a lot about everything. But I also, went to school to learn more about it and took everything that I applied into it. For me, the big changes were the mindset that
mm.
I'm not in a big box. I can still do big box things, but I'm in a small box budget, right? Like massive. And let me tell you, it gets real quick when you do something like that. But
Yeah,
even
yeah.
even still, when I start talking, like, so if I'm up on stage speaking or something like that, I'll actually pull out a segment of my conversation and I just call it dirty HR math. And I'm like, let me help you understand what kind of business price this is for you refusing to deal with a problematic employee. Are you ready for this? Do I have your permission to go ahead and do this?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say, for example, hypothetically speaking, that the average, and this is actually pretty close to the number, the average management salary, median salary across the United States is about $70,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 10% of that is $7,000. 20% of that is $14,000. Okay. Statistically speaking, the average manager earning that average salary is going to spend anywhere between 18 to 20% of their annual time dealing with a problematic employee. So dirty HR math tells us that's about $14,000 of that person's salary attached to
Going towards.
time issues. And not every issue is ridiculous. Some of them are, right? But when you deal with a problematic person who's not stepping up to the plate, who's not showing up on time, who just doesn't have their heart in it, is really like barely doing the minimum, right? This is your lower 10% I'm talking about. Now multiply that number times 10.
No.
That's $140,000 of your company resources going to deal with people who are not on your bus. And the bus is leaving, you're either on it or not, right? So when I say I can quantify just about everything, I can even quantify that. So if we're not addressing and helping to raise these people up or bring in the people who want to be raised up and eliminating the people who are just not willing to play your game and dance to your dance, that's how you really honestly save quite a bit of money. So when I look at problematic employees, when I look at people who are just below par, I always assign a dollar value to it and make it real, because we know one of the top rules of being a business leader of any kind is that you have to make your decisions based on money. People are valuable, absolutely, but they are only valuable when they bring value to the table.
Mm-hmm. In other words, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense.
Love it. Yes, exactly. Right. So that's what I call dirty HR math. And it's spot on.
Yeah. And to look at, I remember reading the 40-hour work week or the 20-hour work week, whatever. It was some low-hour work week. One of those.
I don't.
But I remember reading that, and I was in construction, and it described me to the T. I was chasing after disgruntled customers, chasing down for my invoices to get paid, taking advantage of the good customers who would pay on time and was
Yeah.
kind, who was understanding. So in order for me to appease the bad customer, I would not show up sometimes for the good customer, we're going to be late. Can we reschedule for tomorrow? I was putting up more energy with bad customers instead of creating good practical customer service towards the customers that I wanted to attract more of. So because all my energy was going towards the type of customer that I really didn't want, those were the type of customers that I attracted.
Yeah.
And the same thing you're saying that we do with employees. We spend, how many times we got to bring Ray into the office telling him not to come in smelling like weed?
If you do it more than once, then you got an issue.
But sometimes we take on those. How do you get an entrepreneur who may see themselves in a vendor or an employee, and they say, I don't want to give up on them because so-and-so didn't give up on me, and they take it on as a pet project. I know you have to hear it.
That's an emotional decision. That's an emotional decision. Now, look, there are a couple rules about being a leader and a CEO. Like I already mentioned, the first one is that, CEOs, we make decisions based on money all the time, right? And number two is that we have more problems than anybody else in the company. We own every problem in our business, right? But that doesn't mean that we have to solve every single problem in the business. And rule number three is that if you don't understand rule number one and rule number two, that means that you either don't get the problem, you're not willing to look at the problem, or you are part of the problem. Yeah, right? And rule number 4 is that CEOs don't have problems for very long, which includes a couple of different ways in how they respond to it. Number 1, they will go ahead and take care of it. Number 2, they will reevaluate, determine whether or not that really truly is a problem. And number 3, they will walk away from something that they just don't see is a problem for the bigger business, right? So there are people in this world, and I know quite a few of them, who have exited prison and have done extremely well in this world. And yes, they want to be able to give that person, that next person, they want to send the elevator back down, right? The problem is that not everybody is willing to, capable, or deserving to get on that elevator. And I think if you have somebody who's in that position, like I want to send that elevator back down, you got to ask that question. Is this person willing to do it? Are they willing? Like everybody wants the fruit, but nobody has the roots, right? Are they willing to do it? Are they deserving of it? Meaning that they have demonstrated that they've flipped the narratives in their life. They're showing progress. They're making good decisions. They're winning despite losing. They've learned their lessons. And then lastly, are they willing to actually do whatever it takes to get to the next level? If they're not, find somebody who is, because there's so many people out there. But we're kind of in a world right now where people expect to have things presented to them rather than working hard to get them. Yeah.
I mean, I debate this with my friends all the time. LeBron James' son, Bronny James, are having a roster spot on the Lakers, knowing that his skill set is not that great. We know that nepotism is real and it happens. But for me, looking at it from entrepreneurial side, yeah, he wanted to get star player happy, but you're also taking the job away from somebody, from someone who may be deserving of the job, and you may lose the team as a whole by showing such favoritism to one. And not using that as an example, but if you were to use that as an example or something similar, well, how does that affect the morale of a team when you're trying to team build?
Totally. I wouldn't say it destroys it, but it does take it down a peg. It's like being in a team where you get that one person who's like at about 48%, right? Then like you didn't even make the halfway mark of being decent at 48%. Or that one dude that's like 15 degrees off cool, and the dynamic is impacted. The worst thing that any leader can do is not listen to what's going on to their team. And there are people out there that are afraid to say something to the leader because of that high level of nepotism. I mean, nepotism is one of those things that you know it when it's there, right? And you know it when it's not. You see it. Like that's what happens in family businesses. I've worked in our family business, and I busted my butt. I mean, literally busted my butt. I was given no latitude whatsoever, and I was told by my grandfather under no uncertain terms that I was going to be treated better than anybody else, and I did not have an issue with that whatsoever. Matter of fact, for the first year, except for the old timers that saw me growing up, nobody knew my last name, and it's the same name as my grandfather's name, right? So I was there busting my butt, and I got to a point where I was able to show different levels of mastery. But once people realized who I was, I had conquered that perception of nepotism because people knew what my capabilities were. They also knew what my faults were too. And they realized that my faults were my own, not because of my last name. So on the flip side, you can also be in a situation where you're bringing somebody in and they're doing their damnedest, and you have people who are just running them over all the time because they think nepotism is there when it actually isn't.
Well,
So and that also happened to me as well. I got shifted around in the family business because there was a store manager who apparently had some judgment about me, finally came out and told me that I had no business working for this company. But at the same time, like, I was bringing in more money in my area than most people were able to. And because I was solving the customer's problems, right? So there's nothing perfect to doing business. It never ever is. And there's nothing perfect of dealing with people. And I think one of the things and it's really funny, I kind of had like this aha moment last week. I don't know why I had it, but I just did. Is that you'll have managers out there that fix a problem and they think, oh, this is great. I've addressed it. It's gone away. It's not coming back. Well, guess what?
Shows.
It's showing up again, right? And so we also get into and I've done this too, is that we get into this mind space of like, okay, this is great. Have the conversation with someone, we fix this. And then you expect it not to happen again, only for it to happen again. You wind up getting ticked off and whatnot. And when you're an entrepreneur, that's when you get really angry at the fact that why are people treating this, like to the level that I am? And that's an expectation, right? And it's also an unrealistic expectation. You got to remember these people work for you and people need to be led and guided. And if you're not doing that on a regular basis and holding people to the expectations that you have set, as well as the expectations that you set for yourself, all you're going to be doing is putting out fires all day long.
I told you, everybody, that we sit you at the feet of the masters and we transform lives by having these conversations. My last question for you, and I really appreciate the knowledge is I never really sat down and talked to someone who, with the perspective of HR that you have, like you see both sides of the fence. Usually when the HR is coming, everybody's trying to button up. But you're
I
saying,
know. Nah. Yeah, I raised the Grim Reaper too at one point.
but you're looking at it from the perspective that responsibility is on both sides of the floor, and that any employee can appreciate because all they want is their fair share. What books have impacted you? Have it could be fiction or nonfiction. That if you was talking to someone and you would say, "Oh man, I recommend that you read this book," what would they be?
Oh my gosh. Aside from my own, I
Yes.
will tell you my own. All right. One of my favorite books when you're looking at pulling teams together, right? And starting to centralize. And I do this in some of my workshops. So I'm going to give you all just a little bit of a cheat. It's from John Maxwell. It's called The 17 Essential Qualities of a Team Player. And so this is a really great exercise that I pulled just from reading this book. And one of the things that I do is if I'm in a room giving if I'm contracted to come in and do some, like how do we pull team members together? How do we improve the quality of our team? How do we even get along better with each other? Let me ask you a question. When we look at the word teamwork itself, what to you, NaRon, is the most important quality or the most important thing, one word, for you in teamwork?
Me.
We'll roll with that. So you, meaning I'm going to safely assume that it's your contribution, it's what you're putting in, you're stepping up to the plate for. Okay. My number one most important thing is competency. So is it fair to say that you and I do not have the same perspective of teamwork?
Could be. Or could
Yeah.
not be. Once we start
We're
to
not
look at what
doing the same thing, right? We're not aligned, right? So when you're dealing with competencies, you have to clearly define what those things are. So any leader can pick up this book and literally open it up and look at competencies. I'll give you an example. Let's pull one right out of here. For instance, relational, right? If you want, like, anyone who loves his opinions more than his teammates will advance in his opinions, but flip back the team, right? That says
yes,
somebody who's able to relate to people, right?
yes,
So
yes.
right. So that's a competency, right? So that's one of my favorite books right there, is just to be able to really truly understand what competencies are and why, when you focus in on those competencies and those skills, why you will have such a cohesive team is because you're all playing by the same understanding.
And having an understanding is the beginning of all things, moving
Yeah.
in the proper
Yeah, yeah,
direction.
yeah, exactly. It's like you're setting the playing field up for success by clearly defining and communicating and reinforcing and living up to and thriving within those competencies that you have articulated and you are dialed in.
What's the name of your book?
Well, I just dropped one this past August with one of my very good friends, and he's a business partner. His name is William Branham. He's a retired Navy SEAL. It's called Mission Ready: Building High Performing Teams from the Battlefield to the Boardroom. And so Will and I both took a section of he writes the front half of the book, I write the back half of the book. And so Will talks about his principles of leadership that he learned working on the SEAL teams. Well, here's the secret: when you really exact your principles of leadership and you start really honing those in, guess what? Your people drama stuff is going to come up. Your people's challenge, right? So I go through how to actually deal with that. So really understanding that change is dynamic. Nobody likes change. Change is ew, right? Everybody likes to say ew when I start talking about this. It's like, ugh. But the thing is that when you're dealing with change, change is just quite simply a disruption of a person's level of mastery. That's all it is.
Mm.
They're going through that discomfort of having their level of mastery be completely interrupted. Now that totally frames things up differently, and it brings a sense of reality to the situation. It's like, give them time, they'll work through it, and that's just through the change dynamic that they have to go through. So that kind of gives you a little insight.
There you have it, everyone. Listen, all of Brenda's information is in the description underneath the title. It's a website. On the website, you can get your clarity call if you are a team leader, you're an entrepreneur, and you need to get this skill set down pat. Dealing with people is a skill. It can be learned and we can get better at it. And her book, the link is on her website. So if you are interested in reading and understanding the book from her in the Navy SEAL, which will give you great leadership tips and help you on your way to your victory walk, because together we walk in victory. Brenda is now a part of our family. If you are already a part of the family and or new to the family, you can hit subscribe and like for this particular episode. Um, and if you're listening on a platform that allows you to leave a review, those reviews are better than Cash App, Venmos, Zelles, or anything that you can personally send, uh, because they help us to get further up in the algorithms. And that's your currency to us. We just want these conversations to be heard. Enjoy the rest of your day. Don't walk with your head down. Don't walk making excuses. Don't walk having your team concept centered around me. But most of all, walk in victory. Peace.